Hey, what's up everyone? Are you interested in becoming an archaeologist? Well, if so, you have found the right video. Today, we're gonna dive into this profession so you can find out facts, details, and all that great stuff in order for you to decide whether or not this is something you'd like to pursue. Now, first up, something that a lot of people wanna know about when they're exploring new professions or ideas relating to careers: salary. Well, at the time of this recording, according to ZipRecruiter, archaeologists in the US were coming in around at $60,000 per year. It could go up to about $97,000. However, throw in a PhD, professor of archaeology title, yeah, things are gonna change. They're gonna go up even more than that. Anyhow, if you don't know me by now, I'm the host and producer of this podcast, Life as a, and I dive into professional conversations with individuals from all over the world with one singular purpose in mind. I want to uncover these facts, details, truths, myths, all these great things about careers so you can find your dream job. And as I mentioned, we're getting into the field of archaeology today. And I've got a great guest lined up for you today. His name is Dr. Andrew Kinkella, and he's a professor of archaeology. And he stopped by the podcast Life as a to share insights on his work. And by the way, this guy has a ton of experience. He's just as comfortable trekking through the jungles of Belize, as well as diving down into cenotes, these large, deep reservoirs of water, looking for artifacts, as he is in the classroom and teaching students about archaeology. And he wanted to share a little bit more about his work. Now, in this episode, you're gonna get some highlights from the audio conversation that I had with him, and a few things that you can expect in this video. One, this awesome story of discovery and exploration. He also contrasts what it's like working in the jungle, working in the field, as opposed to roles and responsibilities in the classroom or in the office. And finally, we close out this video with some direct advice from Dr. Kinkella about how you can get into the field of archaeology. So anyway, I think it's about time to get started, but before we do, I would love that like or subscribe. It's the best way to let this YouTube algorithm know that this content matters. So again, I'd really appreciate your support. Okay, I think it's time to get going, so why don't we?
One of my favorites was just something that actually worked out. And it was finding an entire Maya pyramid, right? And
Yeah.
and this is one like I'm talking about, it was maybe like 40 feet tall or something like this. And I found it through using Google Earth. I was at home and I was just messing around with Google Earth. And you know how if you roll the cursor, it'll go like it has an altimeter and it'll go up
Yeah.
and down. And there was
Yeah.
this one spot in our survey area where it would go like bloop, 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 bloop. And I'm like,
Mm.
hey, like the altimeter's going doo doo. Maybe there's something there. And I was like, note to self, next time I'm there, I'm gonna walk out there and see what's up. And so I did. Me and one of the Belizean guys like went out there, and yes, it actually was like sort of a
Get out of
pyramid that
here.
had never been recorded in any way before. Now, I do have to say, everything we do basically on these archaeology projects hasn't been recorded before much, but this one was just interesting because it was bigger and it was built on a hill. So it's like you have the natural hill like this, then you have the pyramid on top.
Hmm.
So while the structure itself was only maybe 30 or 40 feet tall,
Yeah.
adding it to the hill made a very commanding scene. So it felt like a 100-foot tall pyramid.
Mm.
That was really, really cool just because it was one of those 1 in 100 times where it worked. I had a plan. It seemed like a thing. I went out there and was rewarded by finding it. There's so many other times in archaeology where
Yeah.
you just don't, where you're
Yeah.
like, I'll try this, nothing. Hey, I'll dig here, nothing. So that's maybe
Hmm.
another thing that's not talked about that much. How often there's just like not much, or you just don't really, you
Yeah.
never know
Find
what
what
you're
you're
going to
after.
find, but sometimes there's not much. So that
Right.
was that was just really exciting. I remember and just cutting through the jungle and being like, wait, I think this is ah!
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
that was a very exciting moment. So a typical day in the field, there's a lot of variety there. I mean,
I bet.
it can be anything from like um real difficult, like you're sleeping in a hammock and you wake up with bug bites already, and you're sweaty and you're tired and you're lonely and you're depressed, but you still have to put on your backpack, take down your hammock, pack that all away, and
Yeah.
then just sort of start walking into the jungle with a machete, hoping to kind of map in any evidence of the ancient Maya as you go. These might be artifacts, or it might be different structures of different sizes, anything from the remains of an ancient farmer's house, which is just going to be a mound that's maybe, maybe 2 or 3 feet high, up to a much larger structure that you might find somewhere in the jungle. And sort of recording those, writing those down, finding a place to sit down to eat lunch. That's the worst because in the jungle, like what you don't realize, it's like if you want to know what the jungle's like,
Yeah.
make a salad, put it in your fridge for 2 weeks, take it out, and then walk through it. Like that's what a jungle is like. It's just this like wilty, old, wet salad. And
Yeah.
sort of you're going through that. And where do you sit down? These are the things they don't have
Yeah.
college classes on. Where to sit
Yeah.
down in the jungle.
Yeah.
Um, and so
Where to do a few other things, I'm sure, as well.
oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
absolutely. But
Yeah.
the finding, if you just find some sort of stone or boulder, you're like, oh, thank God. Okay, we're gonna sit here and eat lunch.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you eat lunch, you keep going, and it's intrinsically tiring. A field day. A field day is
Yeah.
tiring. It's
Yeah.
it'll take
It
it out
is.
of you.
I'm kind of getting this vibe that it's not your most favorite thing to do, or maybe you're leading up to the point where it's like, well, despite all of this, when you find that thing, then all of that goes away. Or I don't know. Maybe I cut you off too soon there, but
Oh, you cut me off way too soon. I'm very angry. No, it's funny because it's always like this. If you
yeah,
ask any, I don't know, explorer type person, or what's hilarious for me is if you read explorers' logs from like 100 years ago, it's
yeah,
all the same. It's all the same. Where they're just bitching about getting like bitten by bugs constantly, and that they like ran out of food. Like
yeah,
I bitched about the same stuff in my own journal, and so it is intrinsically uncomfortable, but it's intrinsically super exciting at the same
there you
moment.
go. There
So
you
it it is always the same in that way. And there's a portion of it that is just extremely attractive. It's like once you do it, you're like, I just like doing this.
go. Yeah,
I
yeah,
I just I like being in that wilty salad. I just like the
there you go.
jungle. I just like it. I don't
Yeah,
know. I just do.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
So that really helps. But while you're doing it, I will say if it's really hardcore, like you're living in tents or in hammocks or whatever, it's nice to be able to somehow go back into town for the weekend or something like that. That's
I
huge because
bet.
you just get long-term tired if you're just in the jungle all the time, and you need to
Right.
kind of refresh your
How
batteries.
long would you be in? I'm sure it varies project to project, but what would be like an average, or what's been your
It's
longest, maybe?
it's all over the place. So
Yeah.
every year is different. The longest I've ever like been away was 4 months, right? 4 months was the longest. Um, I've done a lot. If I'm looking back, I've done a lot of like 6 weekers or 2 monthers. Now, in
Okay.
that time, maybe it's usually where you kind of break it up, where maybe a lot of the time you're actually living in town. You're actually living in a kind of a basic house, which is like not bad. It still
Yeah.
might not have any air conditioning or whatever, but it's like
Right. It's not the
roof
jungle
over your
though.
head,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. But then while you do that, maybe you take 2 weeks out of that and you're like, okay, these 2 weeks, we're gonna go camping for these 2 weeks. So it's a
Mhm.
lot of times it's a mix like that. And it just depends on the year. It depends on I've had years where it was quite nice, like
Yeah.
living easy, living in a place where they had like a pool. You're like, this is awesome. But then other times where it's like, whoa, we're living in a tent for like a month,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Okay.
every variety of it.
All right. Now, contrasting that to being within the office, obviously the
So,
comfort level is a little different. We kind of touched on that. But,
so
as far as the
nice.
work goes,
So, yeah, a typical day or week as a college professor, it's funny, my schedule is just all over the place. And it's always been like that ever since I started, meaning that like I might have like this semester, I have really heavy Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays where I'm teaching
Hmm.
like all day. right?
Mm,
Because
okay.
I have a Saturday field class where we go work out in the field or we learn how to map or this kind of thing that's like all day. So,
Yeah.
and then maybe I have to come in Thursdays to the office to like work on stuff. So I'll have like a Tuesday, Friday off,
Okay.
Sunday, you know,
Right.
that's,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or I'll teach like a night class. But so there's, you know, a typical day, I guess. I would come into the office in the morning, kind of get ready, and then teach for a few hours. And say I teach two classes in a row or something.
Yeah.
Come back, kind of work on some of my stuff, kind of work on more of my kind of archaeology stuff, and then kind of go home. Maybe as close as a 9 to 5 it gets.
Okay. When you say you're working on your archaeology stuff, like what are you doing there? Are you researching like I don't know, some future sites that you might want to check out, or you're going back and comparing things that you found and trying to dig in further and uncover more fact
Yeah.
and detail? Like what are you referring to there?
The answer is yes to all. So it's
Okay.
like some weeks you're kind of on the computer, you know, like looking up stuff. Oh, I'm looking up other archaeology projects that might be similar to mine, where I'm like, oh, they did this, you know, kind of getting
Yeah.
like tips and tricks from seeing how they did this other one. Other times you might be in the lab, like here at the college, I also have other lab space where you're there either by
Yeah.
yourself or with the students, just dealing with the artifacts, kind of bagging and tagging, organizing them, you know, long-term storage, that kind of stuff. You might be writing a grant, or you might be like trying to get permission to do something, or even
Mm,
like this for me they'll be like, oh, there's an opportunity to you know, be interviewed, or somebody else wants
yeah.
you to write a thing for them, like stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
a lot of different stuff.
Okay. So it sounds like variety is embedded within all that you do,
It
extreme
is, it
variety,
is,
it would
it
seem.
is all over the place.
Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing that's kind of like set in stone is like, okay, you're teaching these classes Mondays,
Right.
Wednesdays, 10 to 11, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's set.
Yeah. One last question here. Like, excuse me, how often are you getting out into the field? Like on a yearly basis? Are we talking a couple times a year?
No, it's not that much. So I did all those long field seasons was when I was younger. It's like, and now, you know, I have a family, but as the children get older, you kind of have this natural curve where it's like you
Yeah.
do it a bunch, you have a young family, you do it less. Kids get older, you start to do it more,
Sure. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm just kind of swinging up again
Okay.
where I don't know if I'd go back for these super multi-month long seasons. In a lot of ways, I don't need to. I'm at the point in
Yeah.
my career where I can do like a really quick, like a surgical strike, like, oh, we're just gonna go for a week. Oh, we're just gonna go for 10 days. And I
Yeah.
can get a lot out of that because
Yeah.
I've already mapped a lot of stuff in so I can
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
be more like that. So at this point, that's the kind of thing, you know, that I would do in terms of all the ancient Maya stuff. Like I'd go for, oh, a week over here in the summer. Oh, 10 days over here. So it's not huge.
Gotcha.
I might still be sleeping in a hammock one night or two, you know, but
Yeah.
it's a
Okay.
smaller world. But then I am also doing archaeology with my students too, like week to
Yeah.
week. So I feel like I'm always in it. Somebody who's interested in getting into archaeology, you know, one of the first things I would do is just look locally for a community college that's offering intro to archaeology. It's really common class. It's going to be in the anthropology department almost every time because in the United States, archaeology is part of anthropology. So it's like anthropology is a study of people, archaeology is a study of people of the past, right? So I would just take an art intro to archaeology class, see if you like it or not. You know, like that's the first thing. If you do, then you know, keep going. See if there's archaeology projects around who take volunteers. You may have to pay to go on a field school, but it could be worth it, you know, and then you'll really know. So you take an intro to archaeology class and then try and get some sort of field experience or this kind of thing. It can even be something like volunteering at a museum, volunteering at a local historical home or something like that. We're all friends. It's all in the same world. So that is where I would go first and foremost. And then you'll know by then if you're into it or not. And then it's just onwards and upwards from there.
Well, I do hope you found that video to be both useful and insightful. And if you did enjoy it, definitely check out the full-length audio version. There we dive into so much more. Dr. Kinkella shares his pathway into the field of archaeology, and by listening to that, you might pick up some tips and insights about how it could be helpful to you in your journey. Plus, he also dives a little bit deeper into the challenges and rewards of the work. And as well, there's something that I want to share is the story. The story that Dr. Kinkella shares is going to have you squirming in your chair. When I heard it for the first time, I nearly fell out of my chair. I hope that teaser works for you, but definitely go check it out. And you can find this audio version wherever you access your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just do that search for Life as a ... All right, well, I will have another profession coming right your way here on YouTube, so don't miss it. All right, well, until then, we'll see ya.